Hayes gripped the steering wheel of her sleek, small SUV, glancing anxiously out the window. She was driving home from the County General Hospital's pediatric wing, where she had worked as a pediatric resident for the last 3 years, helping dozens of small children get healthier every day. Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Today was no exception, but her morning was ruined by a call from her father, Victor Hayes. "Sweetheart, you're free after work today, aren't you?" he asked over the phone, using that tone, the one Tali knew by heart. Unfortunately for her, it never meant anything good. "Well, actually, I was planning to stop somewhere else," Tali quickly fabricated. "The animal shelter. They invited me to volunteer. You know, cleaning cages and giving medication if needed." "You're going to waste your time with that nonsense again?" her father interrupted. "Listen, Tali, your flea-bitten friends can wait. I need you here at the house this evening." "Why?" she blurted out, unable to hold back. "Dad, I was just there 2 days ago. We discussed everything. Remember? You promised to let me decide when I get married." A sound of displeased sighing came through the phone. "That is precisely why I want you to meet Ethan. You simply have to talk to him. Ethan is a quality guy, I'm telling you. Educated, smart, built like a brick house. Plus, he's handsome," her father added. "His father, Kenneth Vance, is a longtime business partner of mine. Remember, I told you about him? We went together to meet with the city council last year. He's a reliable man, and I'm confident that getting to know his son won't hurt." Tali took a deep breath and pulled over to the side of the highway. She knew that if her father got an idea into his head, there was no changing his mind. She still couldn't forget how furious he was when she announced she was going to medical school instead of studying finance at Wharton, as he'd wanted. "Who do you think I've been building this business for all these years? Who am I going to leave all of this to, if not you?" Victor Hayes had yelled in a rush of emotion. "I thought I'd teach my daughter everything I know, pass on the experience to a prepared mind. Our firm must be passed on down from our hands, not to strangers. How can you not understand?" The voice of the businessman, who owned a network of consulting and marketing agencies across the state, was heavy with sorrow and incomprehension. "Going to a top-tier business school? Isn't that the dream of any smart young woman? Wake up! What's wrong with you? Are you really ready to trade a brilliant future as an heiress for kids' runny noses and a career as a simple pediatrician in a busy county clinic?" "But someone has to do that job," she replied, shrugging off his words. "And besides, I truly want to help people, to heal children. What's so bad about that?" Tali crossed her arms, indicating she would defend her position to the very end. Her father just shook his head helplessly. "Oh, God, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Okay, you love kids. Fine, get married. Have 1, 2, maybe 3. I'd be thrilled." He walked up to his daughter and gently took her hands. "And I'll pick out a perfect husband for you. All the girls in our city will be jealous. You can work for the firm for a couple of years, then have the baby. I'll make sure my grandchild has the best nannies and tutors. You'll thank me later for pulling you out of the pediatric rotation. And until then, your future husband and I will handle the business ourselves." Tali sharply pulled her hands away. "So, you've already planned my entire life, I see. But I don't want to run your business or live by your rules. I need my own destiny and my own career, you understand? I don't want to be like Mom, forgetting herself and dedicating her entire life to our family business. Remember where that led?" Tally caught herself just in time and bit her tongue, realizing how cruel her words had been. Her mother had died a few years earlier from a sudden stroke. Tally was still convinced that the cause of her mother's death was working too hard and pouring too much energy into the family business, utterly forgetting about her own health. She had missed the moment when she should have seen a doctor. "I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't mean it," Tally murmured, lowering her eyes in shame. Her father looked at her sadly and waved his hand. "Live as you please," he said, "but don't come complaining to me later about how hard it is and how you're struggling to make ends meet working in your clinic. A free life, you know, is truly expensive in every sense of the word." With those words, Victor Hayes left the living room, leaving his daughter alone. She felt so ashamed that she gathered her belongings that very evening and moved into an apartment near the medical center, deciding to live and earn on her own. She hoped her father would eventually forgive her and accept her choice. It didn't happen right away, but it did happen. Victor Hayes loved his only child too much to completely burn bridges and let her go out into the world without any guidance. While he resigned himself to his daughter refusing to take over the firm, the businessman never gave up the idea of finding her a suitable match. He secretly hoped that marriage would help Tally settle down and abandon her thoughts of other people's children and the hospital forever. "So, come on, daughter. Don't plan anything for the evening," he concluded the phone call. "I'll expect you around 5 o'clock. That's when Ethan will arrive. No arguments." Victor Hayes hung up, leaving Tally sitting in her little SUV, completely bewildered. She didn't want to meet yet another potential fiancé, but on the other hand, nothing hurt her heart like fighting with her beloved dad. "All right," Tally sighed, nodding to herself. "We'll see who he found this time. Maybe, just maybe, this one will be worthwhile." Tally hadn't taken these matchmaking attempts seriously for a long time. Mostly, she was just curious about who he would propose today. However, not a single candidate had ever sparked any genuine interest. Her father mostly tried to introduce her to the sons of his business partners or promising young talents from his firm, who were also related to important, wealthy people. All these young men were impossibly arrogant and utterly boring. They were usually interested in the same things: money, stocks, and modern art, for which they were willing to shell out unthinkable amounts of money. Tally maintained polite interest while examining yet another frankly strange or ugly painting, barely restraining herself while listening to the bragging of those who invested in these monstrous masterpieces. They should have donated that money to someone in need, she often thought to herself. As soon as a convenient opportunity arose, she would immediately ask the waiter for the check. At most, she could tolerate going on one and only one date. Driving a few more blocks, Tally saw an unexpected and slightly awkward sight ahead. Standing on the shoulder of the road was a completely naked young man, wearing only his underwear. The poor soul was desperately shifting from foot to foot, trying to stay warm and actively hitchhiking. But none of the passing cars stopped. It seemed everyone was simply afraid of this strange, half-naked eccentric. "Are you completely out of your mind, walking around like that?" Tally asked, pulling up to the stranger and leaning out of her window, which was barely halfway down. "If you haven't noticed, it's the middle of October." As if in response to her words, a gust of strong wind suddenly swept down the road, swirling the fallen leaves into a picturesque vortex. "Get in quickly," the young woman commanded, gesturing toward the back seat and pressing the button that unlocked the doors. "I can't have him catching pneumonia." The man awkwardly thanked her and immediately climbed into the car, settling into the passenger seat while constantly hugging himself, trying to conceal his nakedness. He was deeply ashamed. "Okay, let me turn the heat up so you can warm up," Tally said quietly, turning the dial to maximum. She tried not to look in the rearview mirror. Still, she felt sorry for the stranger. Being stranded on the side of the road, especially without clothes, was no fun. "And how did you end up out there?" Tally asked, glancing sidelong at her passenger. The passenger shook his head sadly in response, then clamped his hands over his ears, as if he felt unwell. "I don't know. I can't remember." He began rocking back and forth, as if desperately trying to shield himself from something awful. "I keep feeling nauseous and freezing. I think someone poisoned me." "Why do you think that?" Tally asked, listening to his slurred, unintelligible speech. "Maybe you just overdid it with something? Can you remember your name?" The stranger paused for a moment, thinking over her question, but then shook his head negatively. "Nothing. My mind is a complete blank," he said, before adding confidently, "But I don't drink alcohol, and I don't like it. I know that for sure." To Tali, his words sounded like complete nonsense. She suspected the man had most likely had a bad experience, experimenting with various types of liquor. Just then, the stranger in the back seat suddenly got worse. His hands began to tremble with fine shivers, his eyes rolled back, and he lost his balance, collapsing onto the soft fabric of the seat. "Oh my God, what's happening to you?" a frightened Tally exclaimed, stopping the car. She quickly climbed over the seat and briefly examined the poor man, only now noticing that he truly didn't smell of alcohol, or any kind of liquor for that matter. Furthermore, gently lifting his eyelids, Tally was horrified to see his unnaturally dilated pupils. There were bruises and abrasions visible on his ribs. Gasping, Tally frantically searched the glove compartment for a bottle of water she always kept as a backup. As soon as the man came to, she immediately gave him a drink. "Well, now I see you're not lying. It looks like you really were poisoned. I'm a doctor, and you have all the signs," she said. "Listen, you need to get to a hospital immediately. Do you want me to call 911? "No, don't," the passenger replied after taking several large gulps. "They'll probably just treat me like some homeless guy. No one wants problems these days." "But they could at least give you first aid there," Tally protested. However, the stranger continued to insist. For some reason, he absolutely did not want to go to the hospital, and instead asked her to just drive him around the city if she had the time. "Maybe I'll remember something that way," the man pleaded. Tally sighed and agreed. "Maybe we should get you dressed first," she asked, awkwardly looking away. "I really wouldn't want any of my acquaintances to see you like this." Even though her car windows were tinted, she worried that at any moment, the county sheriff or a state trooper might stop them just to check her license and registration. Then not only would she have to explain why a naked man was in her car, but one of her acquaintances driving by might also spot the passenger. The man agreed. A few minutes later, Tally pulled up to a high-end men's clothing boutique. "Wait here, okay?" she asked the passenger. "I'll handle everything myself." Getting out of the SUV, the young woman entered the store and asked for the manager. Soon, a smiling young man was bowing to the affluent customer. "Are you looking to pick out something special for your husband? A gift, perhaps, or a surprise for your anniversary?" "No?" Tally shook her head. "My situation is a little different," she replied, blushing with embarrassment. After which, she asked the manager to step outside with her. "You see that man in the back seat?" She pointed to the stranger. "I need you to pick out a complete outfit for him, including outerwear and shoes. But there's one condition. It has to be done without him trying anything on, just based on his appearance. Can you do that?" The manager looked at the young woman in surprise, but said nothing. After carefully examining the passenger through the windshield, he nodded in agreement. The expression on his face made it clear he was uncomfortable, but the customer's wish was law, especially since Tali had reassured him by immediately showing her platinum Amex card. Her father had given her a special business account which served for unusual expenses, so she correctly reasoned that this was exactly one of those occasions. Asking her to wait a minute, the manager disappeared into the back of the store and reappeared shortly with a large bag in his hands. "Everything you need is right here," the young man assured her. Tali then paid for the purchases and returned to her car. "Well, did anything come back to you?" she asked, just in case, handing the stranger the bag. "Still nothing," the man sadly replied. And after thanking her, he began to get dressed right there in the car. Tali waited outside the entire time, unwilling to be embarrassed any further. When he finished, he called her quietly, and Tali, with clear relief, settled back behind the wheel. At that moment, she remembered that her father was waiting for her at home with another potential fiancé. Groaning at the realization that the evening would be a waste, the young woman reluctantly started the engine. "Excuse me, would you mind if we stop somewhere on the way?" She turned to her new acquaintance. "My dad asked me to swing by for a bit. We'll sort out our family business, and then I'll get back to you. We can figure out what to do next. Maybe you'll remember where you're from so I can take you home." The man nodded, lowered his gaze modestly, and asked, "Excuse me, do you happen to have any food? I think I'm about to pass out from hunger." "Oh, of course, there's a supermarket nearby. I'll buy you something to eat. Soon." Tali was secretly observing in the rearview mirror how greedily the rescued man devoured a hot dog and how much he enjoyed drinking tea from a paper cup. She had bought him an all of it from the deli counter. Judging by his hunger, Tali concluded that her new acquaintance had likely not eaten for a very long time, maybe even more than one day. Glancing at her wristwatch, Tali became anxious. She was already over 40 minutes late for the meeting. Just then, her phone rang in her jacket pocket. "Yes, Dad, I'm on my way." She tried to inject cheerfulness and ease into her voice. "Talia, where are you wandering off to?" Victor Hayes asked angrily into the phone. "I specifically asked you not to be late. Do you even realize the position you're putting me in with people? Ethan has been here for a while. We're only waiting for you." After mumbling a clumsy excuse, she hung up. Tali felt both a sense of shame for letting her father down and a feeling of justified indignation. Why should she even worry about this complete stranger? Was this Ethan Vance so important that he couldn't wait for her? After all, if he truly wanted to meet her, it shouldn't bother him. Pulling into the driveway of the luxurious mansion, Tali asked her passenger to wait in the car. "I'll try not to be long," she assured him. She didn't miss the look of utter astonishment on the stranger's face as he gazed through the tinted window at the lavish house and the sprawling garden with its tall fountain and circular terrace. "That's why I don't live here," the young woman said with a slight smile. "I don't like shocking my friends with ostentatious luxury." The man gave her a look filled with genuine confusion. But there was no time to explain anything, so Tali, nervous about the upcoming encounter, quickly shut the car door and entered the mansion. "Well, daughter, meet him," her father greeted her a few minutes later. "This is Ethan Vance, Kenneth's son. Ethan is also in business. He owns a chain of high-end jewelry boutiques across the country. What's more, these stores cater exclusively to the luxury public and work with very famous people, even servicing some show business celebrities." "Dad?" Tali looked at him pointedly, her eyes full of silent reproach. He was presenting the suitor as if he were an expensive car, not a human being. This deeply embarrassed her and made her feel like a spoiled customer who found fault with everything. "Oh, Victor, don't flatter me too much." A familiar voice came from the other side of the room. And then Tali finally saw the man her father was so eager for her to meet. First, a huge bouquet of roses appeared. Not red ones, but a soft peach color, the kind her mother had loved, and that she loved too. My dad must have fussed, told him what I like, Tali thought, and she automatically accepted the extended flowers. "These are for you," the man said in a handsome, low voice, "to celebrate our introduction. I hope it turns out to be pleasant for both of us." Tali thought she heard a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Inhaling the wonderful scent of the freshly cut flowers, Tali set the bouquet aside, but before she could open her mouth to give him an original, cutting reply in the same tone, her entire body was struck by a powerful, electric jolt of astonishment. Tali was staring into the face of the man she had just left in the back of her SUV. Ethan was the exact double of the stranger. 2 peas in a pod. "It's you," Tali gasped, instantly turning pale. She realized such a coincidence simply could not exist. This man was none other than a twin brother. "Tali, is everything okay with you?" Victor Hayes asked, looking at her anxiously. "You don't look so good. Sit down." The businessman gently guided his daughter onto the sofa, while Ethan smiled at her with his perfectly straight, snow-white teeth. "You must be so tired from wondering whether or not to run away from me like a beautiful Cinderella," he joked. "Just don't forget to leave a slipper, or even better, your phone number and social media handle." Victor Hayes looked confusedly at the young businessman, who seemed indifferent to how his daughter was feeling. The guy had clearly heard about the difficult bride-to-be and wasn't going to put himself in a losing position ahead of time. Tali slowly raised her eyes and realized that with every passing second, she liked this guy less and less. Cinderella first has to decide if she wants to get involved with such an overconfident prince. Tali openly countered his words, after which she noticed a spark of genuine interest flare up in his eyes. Her father, deciding that the two were sizing each other up, excused himself under some pretext to go to the kitchen. He hoped that the intensity of both young people would play a positive role in this meeting. Tali, on the other hand, wanted to rush after him and tell him about the man she had picked up on the highway. But the young woman quickly dismissed the thought. First, she wanted to figure everything out herself. They talked a little more, and Tali quickly realized that Ethan was completely wrong for her. Yes, he also owned a big business, but he seemed much more interested in diamonds and gold than in the world outside his jewelry boutique. The only good thing about this meeting was the opportunity to get a good look at his appearance. And quite soon, it became clear to her, Ethan and her new acquaintance were the same person. The longer it went on, the more nervous the young woman became about her new acquaintance, sitting alone in the car while she was forced to socialize with people she found unpleasant. Finally, she managed to escape the house. "I have a very difficult day tomorrow. Representatives from the state health department are coming. I need to get some sleep." She said this to Ethan and her father with an apologetic smile, then hugged her dad goodbye and hurried back to her SUV. With her heart pounding, Tali opened the back door and found no one there. Did he run off? She shook her head to herself. Well, that's his choice. I'm not going to go looking for him now. Despite feeling slightly rejected, a sense of anxiety lingered. Where will he go? With amnesia, and not in the best shape after the poisoning. It's getting pretty late. She suddenly heard Ethan's voice behind her. I don't think it's the best time for you to drive alone on a semi-empty highway. Let me walk you to my SUV. Leave your car here, and we can take mine. Maybe we can stop at a nice cafe on the way. Ethan offered to escort her in a slightly bored tone, leaning confidently against his large and ridiculously expensive SUV. She was furious. This Vance guy spoke to her as if he were absolutely certain of his own irresistible charm, and that she would immediately rush into his arms just because he offered. "No, thank you," the young woman calmly replied, forcefully slamming her car door shut. "The lighting is good on the road, and I'll get home quickly." "I'd take Ethan's offer if I were you," her father said, walking up with a firm tone. "He's right. There's no need for you to drive back to the city alone. I'll have my guys bring your car to your apartment tomorrow. You can drive it to work then." Tally gave her father a meaningful look. She didn't know how else to explain to him that she had no intention of continuing this acquaintance with Ethan. For the next few seconds, they waged a silent war with their eyes. In the end, the victory went to the daughter. Sighing deeply, the businessman asked her to be careful and make sure to call him when she got home. Growing more worried, Tally slowed down a couple of blocks from her father's house and quickly scanned the area. She hoped the stranger from the highway had hidden somewhere nearby in the bushes, just waiting for her. Maybe I did something wrong. Did I offend him somehow? The young woman wondered, not understanding what made the man run away. But alas, her search that day was unsuccessful. That same evening, Victor Hayes, after seeing Ethan off, locked himself in his study. Brewing a strong cup of coffee, the businessman decided to review the footage from the surveillance camera installed in the living room. He wanted to see if he had managed to find a suitable candidate for his beloved daughter. The businessman decided to watch the couple's behavior during their first meeting. While reviewing the footage, he accidentally stumbled upon a video from the camera he had recently installed in his luxurious yard. To his complete astonishment, he saw a man getting out of his daughter's SUV who looked uncannily like Ethan. The same profile, the same eyes, even the build was exactly the same. Only the suit was different, and the man's hair was slightly matted, as if he hadn't combed it in a long time. "What in the world is going on here?" Victor Hayes whispered to himself, staring at the laptop monitor. "Who did she bring to my house?" Catching the moment of the man's escape on video, Victor Hayes was in complete shock. So, that was the source of his daughter's reaction. Now, it was clear why she reacted so aggressively to Ethan. The girl was simply overwhelmed. Deciding that he would definitely talk to her and find out who this mysterious double was, the businessman calmed down a little. This similarity between the two guys might even be to my advantage. Tally probably found some lowlife. Why would she want him when she has Ethan? Besides, since they look so much alike, my daughter would be a fool not to choose the one who is her equal in status and wealth. The young woman herself returned to her small but cozy condo during this time. She had bought it on her own, with her own money, and even though she now had to pay the mortgage, like all ordinary people, she felt completely independent. The next day, an elderly woman came to her clinic with her small grandson. The boy, Elias Eli, was no more than 9 years old, and he was practically choking from a severe cough. After examining him, the doctor concluded that it was a common cold, just severely neglected. Tally wrote a prescription and warned the grandmother that they would need to come in for a follow-up appointment. But at the last moment, she noticed how unnaturally quiet and sad the boy was. He was almost crying, but was trying to hold back his tears in front of his grandmother. "Excuse me," Tally addressed her. "It looks like your grandson is upset about something, and it doesn't seem to be because of the cold." Ms. Joyce Jenkins looked sadly first at the child, then at the doctor. "You're right," she sighed. "Elias isn't upset about the cold at all. His father, Gregory, disappeared about 2 weeks ago. He went to meet a client in the next town and never came back. Mrs. Jenkins shook her head regretfully. I dread to think that something bad might have happened. The elderly woman wept softly. He worked for a good company. He installed safes for wealthy people and set up alarm systems. I didn't get too involved in the details, though. Tally looked at her with genuine sympathy. I see. Do you happen to have a photo of him with you? Maybe I've seen him somewhere? Tally didn't mention that her own father had recently had a new alarm system installed and super complex safes put in for storing important documentation. Tally thought she might have recognized the boy's father as one of the workers. Ms. Jenkins nodded and showed a picture on her mobile phone. Tally expected to see anyone but the man depicted there. Could I look closer? Feeling everything inside her tighten into a knot, she took the phone and zoomed in on the picture. That was it. There could be no doubt. It was the man from the highway. You know, it's possible I have seen him, Tally finally replied evasively. But I'm not entirely sure. I need to check on something. I'll call you as soon as I have any information. Ms. Jenkins thanked her warmly and almost burst into tears. For the first time in a long time, there was hope of seeing her son-in-law again. Eli looked up, his eyes full of bright, childish hope. You really saw him? When? Where? The young woman smiled kindly. I can't tell you everything yet, but I promise. I'll try to figure things out quickly. And as soon as that happens, you'll be the first to know. The boy smiled joyfully, and the grandmother quietly addressed Tally. You have no idea how much you'll be helping us. The police don't seem to want to do anything. They think Greg just ran away, saying he got tired of responsibility and abandoned his child. But that's not true. Greg loved my daughter, Sophia, rest her soul. She died during childbirth. She only had time to give life to little Eli, and her own heart gave out. Ms. Jenkins couldn't hold back, and a hot tear rolled down her cheek. He's taken care of his son since he was a baby, she defended her son-in-law. He did everything so that Eli and I wouldn't need anything. So I'll never believe in my life that he abandoned us, especially since he had a good job lately, earning decent money, and he was considered one of the best. Tally gave the grandmother a comforting hug, and when they parted, she seriously considered her words. Gregory's job could actually be a motive for a crime, she thought to herself. He must be aware of the codes for all the security systems. Could that have interested criminals? Tally resolved to uncover the mystery of the missing Gregory, no matter what. Dad, why won't you let me live my own life? Tally protested over the phone a couple of days later. I made it clear. I didn't like Ethan. I don't want to go on a date with him. The young businessman had recently suggested they spend an evening together at an expensive restaurant. Tally had replied that she would think about it, claiming she had too much work at the hospital. Upon hearing this, her father immediately took decisive action. I'm telling you, you're going, and you'll be happy to go with him, Victor Hayes insisted. How long are you going to turn up your nose? I've introduced you to everyone. You don't like anyone. And just to remind you, you're not 20 anymore. How old are you this year? 27? A respectable age, you know. Many people are already raising their second child by now, and you haven't even given me one grandchild. Tally was ready to cry from such cruel words. Hoping that it would at least calm her father down for a while, she agreed to go on the date. Ethan instantly brightened up when he heard her answer. He wasn't used to women turning him down. During the date, however, Tally couldn't shake the thought of Gregory. The man who had raised his little son alone since birth, relying only on the help of his late wife's mother, evoked sincere admiration in her heart. Moreover, It seemed unfair that such a misfortune had befallen him, resulting in Gregory losing his memory and being unable to return to his family. "Hey, are you even listening to me?" Ethan asked with annoyance, demonstratively snapping his fingers in front of her face. "Where did you wander off to? What are you daydreaming about?" "Oh, nothing." The young woman brushed him off. She was incredibly bored listening to him. All Ethan did was talk about himself and his diamonds. Then she decided to ask the only question that truly interested her. "Listen, Ethan, did you have a twin brother when you were a kid?" Ethan nearly choked on the piece of steak he had so skillfully speared with his fork. "What? Where are these questions coming from?" He stared at the young woman in surprise, but then softened slightly. "I don't know what you've been imagining, but fine." He dabbed his lips with a napkin, then looked at her carefully. "Your father didn't tell you anything about me, did he?" he said, raising his eyebrows. "But the truth is I was always an only child in the family, but an adopted one." "Seriously?" Tally looked at him in surprise. "And I'm sorry if I offended you. I truly didn't mean to." Tally was embarrassed and hadn't expected such an answer. However, Ethan just smiled. "Oh, please, I've been used to it for a long time. I was 5 years old when Kenneth and his wife adopted me, and since then, they've been my parents, and I've always seen them as my birth family. They completely changed my destiny, so I owe everything I have achieved to them." Tally awkwardly looked away. "But not once during my time in the group home did I hear that I had a brother, let alone a twin." Tally silently nodded. For the rest of the evening, she tried to be as attentive as possible to her date, and diligently maintained the dialogue, even if the topic didn't particularly interest her. At the end of the date, Tally casually inquired about the name of the group home where he had lived. The guy was quite intoxicated by then, so he readily gave her the name of the agency. "I guess I'll call us a taxi," the young woman said with a smile, calling a rideshare through an app. "You look like you're in no condition to drive, and I don't want you to have any problems." Ethan didn't object to the suggestion, so Tally successfully put him into the arriving car. Since she hadn't been drinking, she drove home safely in her own SUV. As she drove, she pondered what she had learned. On her next day off, she drove to that very adoption agency. The building was quite old, and the director even remembered Ethan. "Indeed, your fiancé had a twin brother," he confirmed Tally's shocking suspicion. "If I remember correctly, his name was Gregory, but the second boy was adopted somewhat earlier, a couple of years before. Ethan was only 3 then, so we decided not to tell him anything. We figured since he hadn't remembered his brother, he wouldn't miss him." A stunned Tally thanked the director, also donating a sum of money, and then went straight to Ethan. But when she tried to tell him what she had found out, he became genuinely angry. "So this is why you were digging around and asking me all those questions? You decided to dig up some dirt on me?" he raged. "I don't even believe you wanted to help me." "But it's true," Tally replied, almost crying. "I thought you'd be happy to know you have someone, a blood relative, a brother, and one who looks exactly like you." Ethan just gave her an evil look. "And what do I need that truth for, huh?" he asked, squinting. "What am I supposed to do with it now? If you decided to dump me this way, congratulations. You succeeded." He lowered his voice almost to a whisper. "But if this ever leaks to the press, you'll have only yourself to blame. My father owns a serious percentage of the shares in your family's company, so if anything surfaces, it won't just be my reputation that's ruined." Tally couldn't believe he was serious. Destroy her dad's company? But why? "Why are you so afraid of this?" the young woman asked him directly. She felt tears of hurt and incomprehension streaming down her cheeks. You truly don't understand, he countered with a vicious sneer. Why would I want that? Even if my brother actually exists somewhere, he could be anyone. A drunk, a criminal, anyone at all. In any case, it certainly won't bring me any advantages. Tali couldn't restrain her overwhelming feelings and wept bitterly. So that's how you evaluate people? Only from the perspective of what's advantageous? She asked. Is that how you evaluated me too? They had a terrible argument that evening, and Tali decided she would have nothing more to do with this person. She told her father the same thing directly when he called. Naturally, Victor Hayes was furious. What in the world is going on? I figured you must have done something, upset the guy. And he liked you, by the way. Look, Tali, apologize to him immediately. Tell him you were wrong. You two are a perfect match. I feel it in my heart. But Tali, gathering her courage, said she would not apologize. And besides, you don't even know what happened between us. I hope this doesn't involve that guy who came out of your car that day. Let me be clear. I don't care what went on between you two, but even if he looks like Ethan, I'm sure he's not fit to tie his shoelaces. When Tali learned that her father had seen Gregory on the video, she was even more frightened at first, then tried to explain that it was not what it looked like. Upset, Tali didn't speak to her father for the next few days. She worried that their relationship might be fractured, but she wouldn't humiliate herself in front of that spoiled rich kid. While walking around the city on her day off, she didn't even notice that her feet had carried her to a rather remote area that had a bad reputation. Mostly marginalized people and those who had lost hope of changing anything in their lives lived here. Passing one of the houses, Tali noticed a small group of homeless people, about 5 of them. To her surprise, she recognized Gregory among them. The young man had long ago sold the nice clothes she had bought him. With the money he made, he bought food for himself and his companions in misfortune. Now, he was dressed in old rags, and his face had grown thick, unkempt stubble. Nevertheless, it was him. You don't recognize me, do you? She asked, staring intently at Gregory. But I recognize you. You acted very badly toward me, don't you think? The smile that had been hovering on the man's face slowly faded. Shame and embarrassment took its place. Please forgive me. I couldn't stay in your car. I felt so much anxiety, and this sense of danger came over me. I couldn't take it and ran away. The man sighed and quickly wiped away a tear rolling down his cheek. I haven't remembered a single thing, he admitted. So, I joined up with other unfortunates. We now go to the junkyard together, collecting scrap metal, sorting through glass bottles. That's how we live. Tali herself struggled to hold back tears. She suggested he temporarily move in with her. You know, it's actually a good thing I ran into you, the young woman confessed. I think I was able to find out a few things about your past. But first, you need to clean yourself up. The poor man was so intrigued that after thinking for a moment, he agreed. Since he had practically no belongings, he moved in that same day. However, just as he had washed up and brought himself to a relatively decent appearance, there was a knock at the door. Ethan? Tali asked him in surprise. What are you doing here? I thought we weren't talking anymore. The young businessman was holding a huge bouquet of flowers, beautifully tied with a festive ribbon. Well, I think I was a bit too hot-headed then, the guest replied, smiling. Maybe we can try again, only without all those foolish talks about brothers and things like that. Hearing the last phrase, Tali looked at him with a sad smile. Come in, you probably need to see for yourself. Ethan, slightly confused by the strange response, slowly walked into the room. The bouquet fell from his hands. When he saw a man in front of him who looked exactly like him, it was as if he were looking in a mirror. Only the reflection in that mirror was dressed differently. "It can't be," Ethan whispered, walking toward his brother. "So, all of this is true?" Gregory looked at him, only managing a faint smile and a shrug. Tally had managed to tell him a little about what she had found out on the way home. To her surprise, Gregory reacted calmly to the news. "Honestly, I always felt something like that," he thoughtfully replied to the young woman's revelation. "I knew there was family somewhere, and not just a mother or father, but someone especially close and related. Like a part of me, you know? I don't know how to explain it." Tally nodded understandingly. She had heard stories about the special bond that exists between twins, but Ethan, it seemed, felt no such thing. Or maybe he intentionally suppressed any brotherly impulses, because his reaction made it clear. He truly had no suspicion that the fairy tale about a twin brother could be a reality. "Wow," was all he could manage to say before he suddenly collapsed, losing consciousness. When Ethan came to a few minutes later, he was surprised to find that it was not a dream. After talking to his brother and learning that he remembered nothing, it wasn't that he wasn't happy to see Gregory, but the entire story made him quite wary. Furthermore, Ethan began to worry about his inheritance. After all, his blood brother could, in theory, lay claim to his adoptive father's company. Reassuring himself that Greg clearly wasn't in a state for such complexities, he needed to remember who he was and what he did. Ethan relaxed a little. Tally, meanwhile, told Gregory what she had managed to find out about his family. Hearing that he had a mother-in-law and a little son, he was initially happy, but then shook his head in distress. "How can I show my face to them in this state? Especially since I don't recognize or remember them. They're waiting, hoping I'll be the same person they are used to." Understanding that he was not yet ready to meet his family, Tally decided to help and contacted a familiar doctor in the trauma department of her hospital who specialized in traumatic brain injuries. She asked for Gregory to be examined and, based on the results, for a treatment plan to be prescribed. However, even a month after the start of therapy, his memory still had not returned. It seems his brain was exposed to some very strong toxins for too long, the doctor regretfully stated. The area responsible for this part of his memory appears to have been burned out. I don't know if it will ever be fully restored. Tally was devastated by this conclusion. She had hoped his memory would return. They still hadn't figured out what had happened to him. Then the young woman decided to take an unconventional route and took Gregory to see a good psychic medium. Auntie May had once worked with Tally's mother, and although Tally and she hadn't been in touch for a long time, she warmly welcomed the young woman and agreed to help. Putting Gregory into a hypnotic trance, Auntie May did the same to herself, and then, mentally connecting to the man's memory, restored the erased recollection. To Tally's great surprise, the clairvoyant directly confirmed the theory that the young woman had been contemplating for quite some time. Gregory was indeed kidnapped because of his work. The criminals needed the safe codes and data to disable the alarm systems in the homes of several very famous and wealthy people. According to Auntie May, and later confirmed by Gregory himself, as he recalled the details, he was snatched right on his way to the next town where he had been scheduled for a fake meeting with a non-existent client. Staging a minor accident on the highway, the bandits roughly pulled him out of his car and put him in theirs. The last thing he remembered was a suffocating black fabric bag being placed over his head. "They tortured me for several days. They beat me and demanded the codes, threatening to kill my son," he recounted later, swallowing bitter tears. Then they started injecting me with some kind of awful drug. It made my head spin, and I felt like I was moments away from telling them everything. I just couldn't control myself. Realizing that he was most likely talking about psychotropic drugs, Tally mentally shuddered. She couldn't even imagine what the man had endured. Auntie May helped Gregory remember that he had run away almost the very moment the criminals decided to eliminate him, realizing they wouldn't get any information. "I don't even clearly remember how I managed to break free," he said. "Maybe they had already dosed me heavily by then. I acted on instinct. I think I ran toward the ventilation shaft under the roof of a barn." When he reached the road, the stress and the drugs did their damage, erasing most of his memory, including the knowledge of himself. Tally eventually helped Gregory legally restore his identity in court and get a new driver's license to replace the lost one. In addition, she told the police everything and forced them to re-examine the case of Gregory's disappearance. After a while, shocking details came to light. The main person who ordered the entire operation was none other than Ethan Vance. As the investigation established, he had been cooperating with criminal organizations for a long time, but he carefully concealed his dealings from both his adoptive father and his other business associates. Of course, Ethan didn't know the safe installation specialist by sight. However, he didn't need to. His criminal handlers ordered the kidnapping with a very specific goal. Ethan didn't bother to delve into the rest of it. And now, the never-to-be fiancé began serving his sentence in a state prison. Gregory decided to visit his brother and actively support him, promising to help him rehabilitate. With all his memories restored, Greg finally returned to his family. Little Eli and Ms. Jenkins were incredibly happy and said they would never let him go. And Greg himself had no intention of leaving. He started dating Tally, who had helped him so much and whose feelings helped him feel alive again. After some time, they got married and began living together with Eli and his grandmother in complete harmony and understanding. Tally's father had to accept his daughter's choice. In the end, he came to the conclusion that if she was happy, he would be happy too, especially since his daughter promised him a granddaughter. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.